built East Germany into a police state with a dossier on every third citizen. These were used to harass anyone who showed any sign of critical thinking or opposition. The Stasi was modelled after the Soviet NKVD, but quickly surpassed it in the sophistication of its methods. In this episode of How It Was, we will recall the history of the most effective intelligence service in the Eastern Bloc. You will learn how a mass surveillance system was developed in the GDR and how Stasi agents infiltrated the political elite in the neighbouring Federal Republic of Germany, FRG. We will also recall what the Stasi had in common with the Palestine Liberation Organization and how East German agents used gaslighting to neutralize dissidents. Please click the subscribe button so you don't miss new episodes of How It Was. The Ministry for State Security, Ministerium für Staatssicherheit, popularly known as Stasi, was established on February 5, 1950. It was created under the supervision of the Soviet Ministry of State Security, the MGB. Even when it firmly got its feet and took control of the whole country, the Soviet officers continued to supervise their German colleagues. The first head of the Stasi was Wilhelm Zeisser, who had a long relationship with the Soviet authorities back in the 1920s. He collaborated with Soviet intelligence. During the 3 years of his leadership, Zeisser managed to open Stasi offices throughout the GDR and increase the staff by almost 10 times. However, it soon became clear that the new secret service was not yet effective enough. In 1953, a powerful economic crisis broke out in the country. On June 17th, a popular uprising began in the GDR. The Stasi, which was supposed to strangle the rebellion in its inception, failed to cope with the task. Finally, protests of hundreds of thousands of outraged workers were crushed by troops of the USSR and the GDR. The ruling Communist Party, known as the Socialist Unity Party of Germany, was scared of the riots. Zeisser, who fell out of favor, was expelled from the party, removed from his post, and replaced by Ernst Wollweber. After the uprising, the Stasi was made subordinate to the Interior Ministry of the GDR. Finally, in 1957, Erich Mielke became the head of secret police, who led the Stasi until its dissolution in 1989. Mielke was a staunch admirer of Stalin and Dzerzhinsky. He combined communist convictions with frankly lordly manners. For example, he drew up for his secretary instructions on how to serve breakfast properly. It was Mielke who developed a system of comprehensive surveillance over virtually every East German person. The Stasi headquarters were located in East Berlin. It was a vast complex with almost 50 buildings and thousands of offices. From there, the Stasi managed branches throughout the country, secret facilities and safe houses for clandestine meetings. The number of employees grew steadily. In 1950, the secret police employed 1,100 people, by 1953 already 10,000, and by 1961 20,000. In 1989, the Stasi had 91,000 full-time employees, not counting the nearly 190,000 who worked unofficially. If we sum this up, we get about 280,000. That is every 57th inhabitant of the GDR working for the ubiquitous Secret Service. This knowledge is based on the documents that the regime did not manage to destroy. Some historians say there were 500,000 unofficial collaborators, and one former Stasi worker cited 2 million employees. Don't forget that the overall population was about 16 million. For comparison, the secret police of the Third Reich, the Gestapo, had only 1 employee per 2,000 inhabitants. The Soviet KGB, 1 per 5,800 citizens. The Stasi had carte blanche as long as its members acted on behalf of the Socialist Unity Party. Its tasks and responsibilities were not defined, and no legal restrictions were imposed. Foreign intelligence was one of the areas of activity where the Stasi managed to achieve impressive success, especially in the Federal Republic of Germany. Tens of thousands of Stasi employees worked there. They got into the corridors of power, the largest enterprises, and the army. They even managed to infiltrate the left-wing radical terrorist groups that flooded the FRG in the 1970s. They collaborated with the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, and the infamous leftist terrorist Ilich Ramirez, also known as Carlos the Jackal, who killed about 80 people. The Stasi allowed Libyan terrorists to carry out the 1986 discotheque bombing in West Berlin, leaving 3 people killed and more than 200 injured. The secret police provided the terrorists with a refuge in East Berlin. The most famous Stasi agent in Germany was Günther Guillaume. Back in the early 1950s, he was sent to West Germany to study and eventually got a job in the Social Democrat Party of Germany. Guillaume quickly climbed the career ladder and in 1972 became personal assistant to German Chancellor Willy Brandt. Guillaume passed on to his curators secret information to which he had free access. Moreover, he directly influenced the FRG's policy towards the GDR and other countries of the socialist bloc. He was exposed only in April 1974. This story was the reason for Brandt's resignation from the post of Chancellor. The spy was sentenced to 13 years in prison but freed in 1981 in a prisoner exchange between GDR and the FRG. Guillaume returned home as a national hero. However, most of the Stasi informers worked within the GDR. The finest hour of the special police came in the 1970s with the beginning of the so-called policy of détente. During that period, East and West Germans began to contact each other more often, which was dangerous. After all, they compared capitalism and communism, which was not in favor of the latter. The recently crushed Prague Spring of 1968 also forced many Germans to reconsider their political views. As a result, many dissidents and free thinkers appeared in the GDR, wanting to rid the country of state planning and one-party dictatorship. Thus, the Stasi became even more active in recruiting collaborators and informers in response to this. The Stasi officers spied on the inhabitants of the GDR, violating every human right. They tracked down dissidents, followed them, tapped phone calls, and intercepted letters. The agents were armed with advanced spy equipment, bugs, and mini cameras. The Ministry for State Security initiated criminal cases against dissidents, expelled them from the country, threw them in prisons, and staged show trials. For all the years of its existence, the GDR secret police arrested about 250 to 300,000 people. The Stasi even had special prisons for dissidents. They were placed in cells isolated from the world where neither light nor sound could penetrate. Sometimes free thinkers spent years in such cells without accusation of trial just to keep them isolated. However, sometimes the secret police did not resort to arrests. For instance, if the dissident was a too well-known or significant personality. In such cases, other methods of influence were used. For example, the Stasi spread rumors about supposed alcoholism or homosexuality of their victims or their support of the Nazi ideology. One of the most sophisticated psychological techniques of struggle against free thinkers was the Zersetzung, German for decomposition. It was the targeted gradual use of various means of subtle psychological torture. Zersetzung involved methods like breaking into people's homes and rearranging things, taking laundry or food, things that would make the target question the nature of what was happening. Other practices included calling in the middle of the night from unidentified phone numbers or sending strange objects in anonymous packages. It could also be as simple as being turned down for a job or a permit to travel over and over again. The goal was to spread anxiety and fear, make the victims doubt their mental health, this is called gaslighting, and secretly destroy people's self-confidence, for example, by damaging their reputation. As a result, many victims of Zersetzung not only quit the opposition activities, but also indeed went crazy, drank themselves to death, or committed suicide.
If I gave you $600 just for watching this short video, would you keep watching?
The Stasi sought to control all spheres of public life. They opened all letters and parcels coming from the FRG, and thousands of employees listened to telephone calls from West Germany every day. They paid particular attention to the northern regions of the GDR. It was there that the workers' uprising of 1953 began, and the guardians of ideological purity remembered this well. The Stasi agents worked at every enterprise in the GDR, even in the smallest towns. Most often, these were ordinary workers informing the secret police about protest moods or activities. In schools, Stasi officers recruited teachers and pensioners helped them in apartment buildings. The reasons why people agreed to cooperate with the secret police were several. Some believed that this would help to bring the victory of socialism closer. Others were demoralized, intimidated, or blackmailed. Still, others chased material goods. As in the entire communist bloc, there was a shortage of available goods in the GDR, and intelligence agents were provided with spacious apartments and cars. In addition, they received packages from the FRG, confiscated from the population. The total control of the Stasi over the country was not a secret for the society. People found out about it pretty early on. Young people were closely monitored. About 6% of the documented Stasi collaborators were under 18. They reported not only on political oppositionists but also on those who could be recruited. Since no one knew the names of the agents, young people plunged into the abyss of total mutual distrust that accompanied them throughout their lives. Paranoia was widespread among Stasi employees themselves. They spied on and denounced colleagues, friends, and even family members, and of course they constantly monitored each other. Often, this excessive vigilance led to strange embarrassment. For example, in May 1980, Stasi spies accidentally took photographs of a senior member of their team leaving and entering a house that had been put under surveillance in New Brandenburg. It emerged the man had used the same building to maintain an extramarital affair with a colleague in the secret police. The Stasi era ended with the fall of communist regimes in Europe and the dissolution of the Socialist Unity Party. Erich Mielke retired on November 7, 1989. On November 17th, the Council of Ministers renamed the Stasi the Office for National Security. However, due to massive popular protests, the new organization did not have time to start work. Thus, in February 1990, the Stasi was officially disbanded. After the fall of the Berlin Wall, the Stasi became the #1 target for the inhabitants of the GDR, and thousands of East Germans stormed state security branches across the country. On January 15, 1990, the demonstrators took over the Stasi headquarters in Berlin. Officials in former East Germany did everything to destroy documents, but part of the archive still survived. It turned out that the special police had a dossier on 6 of the 16 million citizens of the GDR. On October 3, 1990, a former Protestant pastor and prominent dissident Joachim Gauck took over responsibility for the Stasi archives as a special representative of the federal government. They contained vast amounts of papers and videos and about 1.5 million photographs. According to the Stasi Records Act passed in 1991, individuals and journalists are free to use these materials. Only after people gained access to their files did they learn how subtly and imperceptibly the secret police intruded into their private lives. Do you like the video? Please click the bell so you don't miss new episodes of How It Was.